So it seems like our numbers have started to even out a little bit. So I think we're going to get started. I want to welcome everyone officially to the Norton Master Plan Virtual Open House. We'll take a look at the big reveal of what the master plan looks like and how we can interact with it a little bit more. So tonight's agenda, we're going to do a little bit of introduction as well as an overview of what the process has been like over the past 2 years. We'll take a look at the master plan itself and dive a little bit into some of the vision statements and goals and how we can read that, and you'll start to recognize a phrase that I will continue to say called a recipe for success. And then towards the end, we'll just close with ways that you can share your feedback. I want to emphasize that this is just the beginning of the virtual open house. We'll continue on for 2 weeks where we can gather insights and your feedback for this. So SERPED, as many of you may know from previous workshops, we are the regional planning agency for Southeastern Mass. And during the master plan process, our role has been to listen to you. To gather your feedback and really glean out what your goals are, your vision is for Norton over the next 5 to 10 years, and really figure out what the priorities are. We also took a look at data, gathered it, analyzed it, and put it in a way that hopefully was something that really resonated with you guys and was able to get across some major ideas and trends. And from there, hopefully at the end of today and over the next 2 weeks, you'll be able to see that we've crafted a plan to respond to the goals that we've heard from you and really charters a path to achieve them with clear implementation. So to backtrack for 1 second, the Norton Master Plan and master plans in general are really an analysis of all aspects of community development. And you'll notice this in the way that we take a look at the different elements and chapters of the master plan: land use, housing, economic development, all the way to transportation, circulation, open space and recreation, as well as natural and cultural resources. And it's really a plan that looks at the community's growth in a number of different ways. I know the presentation says physical, but we're looking at economic growth, social development, and how we can really plan to meet the needs of the community down the line in the future. And I want to emphasize that the master plan should have a life for about 5 to 10 years. You know, these goals and the vision that we have isn't something that can take place and be implemented over, 1 year. It takes some time, and it may even lead into the next master plan. But it really helps us guide local policy as well as decision making as we move forward into the future. This here is a timeline of the master plan process. You can see that we started in 2019, and over the course of that, we've really gone through so many different topics, and you'll see how some of those ideas have come together. And this leads me into the next element that you'll notice. For each of those 5 tabs that we see there, really made up our public engagement. Because we had a chance to start in 2019, we were able to have some face-to-face with local stakeholders, residents, business owners, as well as town staff. And this was a great way to just establish a great rapport with people. So you'll see that picture there is from one of our first workshops where we kind of just talked about information about Norton over coffee and donuts and chatted. And then as the pandemic kind of made its way, we pivoted and everyone pivoted with us, right? Thankfully. And with that, we really started doing virtual workshops, being able to still have some of that face-to-face, but maybe not in person. And in order to get that topic-based feedback about land use, about transportation and services and facilities, we created some surveys in order to kind of help gather the right questions and responses from you guys. And one of my favorite exercises, I should say, was the mapping exercise. That's something that followed us from the beginning all the way to the very last topic-based workshop. And it was very interesting to see how people would add points in the beginning, and someone in the 5th workshop would comment on something that was said from the first one. And it was really great to see that connection. And the connections drawn between workshops, because when people think about land use, it's not just a individual silo issue. It's something that touches on housing and economic development, And it was great to see those connections there. So the master plan that we are releasing today really conveys what should be the vision for the town over the next 5 to 10 years. And our hope is that this plan reads easily, it's concise, and it's also user friendly. And I think the way we manage to achieve that is by establishing kind of that recipe for success that I mentioned earlier. The vision statements for each element of the master plan is really the foundation of those topics. And each vision statement is complemented by goals that break that down a little bit and strategies that are action items that help us achieve each individual goal and thus reach that broad vision statement that we're talking about. So these here are, it's an excerpt from the master plan itself. And you'll see that each one has a big vision for what we can achieve in Norton over the next 10 years in relation to all these elements. My first example is going to be on land use, so I'll just highlight that one really quickly. When it comes to land use in Norton, we're really thinking about encouraging development. So Norton is a vibrant, walkable, and recognizable place, specifically at nodes and corridors, while really thinking about how we can continue to protect Norton's natural and cultural resources and neighborhoods. So that's the vision. When it comes to looking at the master plan and interpreting and interacting with the goals and strategies, I really want to break it down here. One of the goals for that vision statement for land use is to modernize the town zoning bylaw to meet priorities on growth and preservation. And the strategy, that's our action item, is talking about implementing and promoting the Village Center Core District. So it provides a clear description of the actions the town can take to make progress on this and achieve that goal and also that vision. I want to touch on what's in this blue box here. You'll notice this is a consistent theme throughout all of the goals and strategies that you'll see. We provide information about who's responsible for implementing the strategy, what describes the achievements to drive performance, and what other examples exist out there in other cities or towns that may have already successfully implemented them and that we can look to in order to model our own approach. And one of the other elements that we really like to integrate, because it talks about how all the elements kind of speak to one another, is the complementary actions. So with the Village Center Core District strategy, implementing and promoting it, we believe that it ties very closely to economic development and implementing placemaking in the village center, including signage. So with that, I also want to highlight one last piece, which is priority. We're talking about what priority is between low and high, and the attention that we should really be giving it, whether it's flexible or it's something that we should be doing immediately. So you'll notice that the previous one had high priority and immediate action. And this was because the Village Center Core District was already approved by the planning board and really just needs to go through and be placed into the zoning bylaw in order to be implemented and promoted. And that's one of the main things that we're recommending. And it's something that can be done immediately and have a great impact. So let's take another look at an example. This one is talking about services and facilities. And for this one, we're looking at the vision statement that talks about making sure that Norton's infrastructure and town services meet the demands of growth and change. So how do we break that down a little bit? Let's look at the goal, and that's replacing and modernizing aging town buildings. I know we've talked about this already, and there's a lot of momentum with regards to town hall and the senior center and some athletic complexes as well. But where does that leave the rest of our facilities, right? So one of the things that we recommend as an action item to keep this momentum going forward is to evaluate and implement an ADA transition plan for town-owned buildings and facilities. This is an action item that the town can take that we see the town manager and the building inspector are responsible for implementing. And we noticed that the performance measure is applying for a grant through the Massachusetts Office on Disabilities to apply for monies to fund the creation of that plan. and then also fund capital improvements that are recommended through that plan. And as you can see, when we talk about success stories, we looked at that example through the town of Longmeadow, where they applied for the same grant, received $20,000 to complete their plan, and as a result of that plan and the recommendations that were in it, they received $150,000 for improvements. So that's something that Norton can feasibly mimic and really recreate in the town to better our facilities. And when we talk about ADA accessibility and making sure that all our facilities are open and available to all our residents, we think about how open space and recreation kind of crosses that as well when we think about parks and recreation. So I want to do one more example talking about transportation. So the vision for transportation is to improve circulation, safety, and the appearance for all users. This may also consider promoting alternatives to driving, so that way we can enjoy those recreational and natural places in Norton. The goal here that we broke down was to complete key transportation projects that improve circulation, safety, and appearance in Norton. One of the strategies that we identified for Norton was to implement the Norton Bike Path. There is funding already available for this project, and it represents a really great win for the town in the sense that it would connect the Taunton and Mansfield bikeway networks. So this, as you can see here through the graphic, has high priority and immediate action and attention that we can take. And as listed there, we have the responsible parties, the performance measures, which is really making sure that we're managing and monitoring the project in partnership with MassDOT and SERPED. And that success story that we point to really looks at our neighbor, Mansfield there. So those are some ways that we talk about the vision, the goal, and the strategy. And that's what I call the recipe for success there. Before I move on, are there any questions regarding any of the topics that we've already talked about, or how to maybe interact with the master plan? I see Chris Keys, your hand is up.
Was that? Thank you. I hope you're doing well. I had my first haircut today in 15 months.
That's
feels
great.
Good. So a couple of things. Obviously, my comments are going to be pretty specific to bicycling in Norton. I think it's a really critical aspect given the fact that bicycle usage has exploded during the pandemic, and will maintain most of that. E-assist bikes are changing the game. Adoption rates are looking like it's going to be 4% of the population will have electric assist bikes by 2025. That would put 800 e-assist bikes on Norton's Road based on the population. This game is changing, and it's changing rapidly. I'm thrilled about the potential for the Norton Bike Path. That's terrific. But I do think relative to the mission that bicycling needs to be specifically identified, because it is going to be an important component, just as important as the ability to walk around the town of Norton. So that would be one piece of information I'd like to add. And then the second piece would be relative to the fact that we need to be thinking about how do we connect this rail trail to the rest of the town. I've spent a lot of time, I biked literally every single road of all 60 miles in Norton. I've put together information on that, on roads that could be class 3 bike routes, very inexpensive, just requiring signage just to notify drivers that bikes can be on this road and to share the road. I think that's critical, because that bike trail bisects the town, and it's fabulous, but we want to be able to get people to it as well. And so I really think it's important that we continue to expand on this strategy, because ultimately in the next 5 to 10 years, bicycling is going to be a huge component in the town, and to be able to plan for it, I think, is critical, and would allow Norton to be on the cutting edge of what's happening relative to this bicycle boom that's taking place in the country. I appreciate the opportunity to make the comments.
Chris, do you mind?
Thank you.
Lizette, do you mind? Chris, when we've talked before, you mentioned something else, and feel free if you want to bring it up too, about the bike trail and land uses, right? Your idea of where can we maybe look at retail that's supportive of the bike trail. So you stated that so well when we've talked about it, and would love to hear you talk about it again.
I'd be happy to mention something. So there's a number of benefits that bike trails bring to the community. Recreation, health, all those things, building, connecting communities. But to what Paul alluded to is the fact that commerce is something that bike trails bring to the community. And there is one section of the bike trail. I wish the bike trail could be through towns like Barrington and Warren and Bristol, Rhode Island, which the bike trail goes right smack through the center of those communities. But in Norton, we have the bike trail intersecting on a perpendicular basis to Route 123. And I'm not 100% sure, and Paul and I have talked about this, whether the village commercial extends to that section. It's really close, but we're not sure it extends. But I think it's really important that where the bike trail intersects with Route 123, all four corners of that intersection be zoned for village commercial, so that businesses that not only are looking for a great location, but also would like to be interconnected with the rail trail, could be able to have an opportunity to emerge. And so that's another component I think is really critical to the planning aspect, so that in 2023, when this rail trail becomes operational, God willing, then what happens is we not only have the rail trail, we've got businesses that are going in to support the rail trail. We have class 3 bike routes, possibly with sharrows, but you don't have to have the sharrows. That's not critical. Just certainly, though, signage that would allow people to really flock to this rail trail, come together. And I think that's the kind of thinking that I think I would encourage Serped to include in this master plan.
Yeah, for sure. It didn't. I didn't include it in some of our examples. There are many other goals and strategies that we could discuss. We could be here all night. I'm happy to say that we did include an element about commerce in relation to the bike trail. So I encourage you to take a look at that one. And if you have any comments on it, I can share how you can submit those after this. Any other questions?
Hi.
Hi.
I go by Kim, even though it's Kimberly on there.
Hi, Kim.
Hi. So just sort of a general question, responsible parties are listed in each of these. What is their engagement, or what is their commitment, or how are they held responsible? Is that through voters, or, I know, like, I was involved in the bike path years ago, and I have a home in New Hampshire that is, the town has the Northern Bike Trail, which is now up to, I think, 58 miles of 4 season recreation trail. It's beautiful, and we've enjoyed it from walking to bicycling to snowmobiling in the winter, all of those things. So I recognize the benefit that it brings to a town on many, many levels. But I feel like, this was years ago that I was at meetings and it just kind of died out.
Yeah, no, that's a great point. So we try to make it as easy as possible to bring the town to the point of collaborating, right? Once we submit this plan to the town, we provide an implementation table so that the town can keep track of where their progress is. And sometimes it does take time for these things to come together. And that's something that we kind of have to deal with staff turnover and changes in how we do things. But I think it's really important with the way that this plan is structured that we call out who is responsible for it. And with the implementation table, we're able to say, this is a starting point, and how we move it forward really is, it depends on the town, right? We're giving the town all the tools it needs to kind of plan for all of these things. And at that point, I think the town, it's time to step up to the plate and say, okay, we're going to take this, we're accepting this master plan, and these goals are achievable and feasible. And if that's something that we can hear during this comment period, right?
Mm-hmm. And so then it becomes up to the voters. I mean, to hold people accountable. I'm looking at different departments here with this, and town manager with this, and I just feel like, these are all, and like you said, you've laid out things beautifully, from assigning responsibility in a way, to performance measures and giving all of the pieces. But, and call me a skeptic, and I'm sorry for being negative Nancy here, but I just worry that you've done all this work, you've created this plan, and then if somebody drops the ball, one of these departments, one of these groups just says, oh, we don't have the budget, oh, we had staff turners, oh, we had this, it dies. And go ahead.
Yeah. Hi, Kim. I'm Paul. I'm the planning director, and I totally agree with you. And we want, myself, I want to be held accountable for the things that we're responsible for. So that's a great question. And it's going to be important that we work amongst other departments. You'll see also that we have in many of these where boards and commissions are also responsible. Town manager, we all report to the town manager. So we need so you're bringing up very crucial points, and we went back and forth on this, with Serpide, and they've heard me talk about this, and they're probably going to cover their ears, but it is critical for us to lay out the prioritization of it, because obviously we can't do everything at once, and we have to align our capabilities with what the top priorities, what can be done more quickly. Now, things like implementing the Norton bike path, that's a little more challenging, because now you get involved with state funding and other funding and federal funding sources that we don't have control over. But that doesn't mean it falls off the table. That means we still try to do other things to make that happen. So we're going to take a project management approach to this. As Lizette mentioned, they will provide us with essentially worksheets, and that's going to help us, prioritize, and then, help us launch into these different initiatives. Okay. But great. I will also just point out, what's a challenge here, is that, we don't have capacity in all, as many fields as we would like. So, for example, the planning department's responsible for a whole host of things that I'm the one planner. We have 2 people on staff right now. It's just one, but we're responsible for working with several boards. But things like housing and transportation, we just don't have the bandwidth for it. So fortunately, groups like Serpide help us out when we can. But there may come a time when we have to have a good discussion over, do we need to hire more people to do this? Or do we partner, do we contract more to try to make these things happen more efficiently than, like you said, if one of us leaves, does that mean it stops until the position gets filled? So those are things as the community too that we're going to need to try to figure out. And, whether it's hiring more people or trying to figure out other sources other resources that we can use. We have to be resourceful about all of this. But absolutely, I'm with you, and very happy that you're bringing this point up about accountability.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, for sure. All really important points. I know the master plan can be overwhelming because it does touch on so many topics. But we do recognize that there are limitations, staffing, and what may come up, town priorities. But like I said, we're hoping that this is something that residents and staff can read and take a look at and see, if this is feasible and we think it's something we can do, then let's move forward with it. And if there are any changes we need to make, there's definitely still time, and we're open to that. And I do want to mention that like we mentioned earlier, the shelf life of a master plan is 5 to 10 years. And if in that period of time we revisit this and say, where are we at? Do we need to update this? Do we need to check in with one another? That's also an option that the town can explore when the time comes, if they so choose. But before I move on, any other questions? All right. So as we've taken a look at the strategies and how to take a look at the relationship between the visions, the goals, and those action item strategies, there's 2 weeks to provide your feedback. This is just the first of the opportunity to engage with us regarding the master plan. We have also provided a public comment form as well as a link to the master plan, which you'll find in the chat, but you can also find on the website. As well as virtual office hours, which we will host next week. June 8th, we'll be talking about open space and recreation, natural and cultural resources at 6 p.m. June 9th, we'll focus on land use, housing, and economic development at 6 p.m. And then Saturday, on June 12th at 10 a.m., we'll talk about transportation, circulation, services, and facilities. We gave each day those themes and topics, but if for some reason you can't make it to the one that's dedicated to it, feel free to join, pop in, ask a question. Feel free to join anytime during that period, and you can stay for 5 minutes, you can stay for 10, it's all up to you. And I encourage everyone to take a look at the workshop webpage, where again, you can download the master plan, read through it slowly over coffee in the morning, right before bed, whatever you choose to do. But we really highly encourage your feedback on this plan, what your thoughts are, if there are any things that we could add to really flesh out some of these topics. We really value your input, as we have throughout this whole process. So with that, I want to thank everyone for joining us. I'll open it up for one last opportunity for questions. I do want to recognize my colleagues here tonight who have really helped us put all of this together and created the product that we have here today. Sarah Brown, Philip Hugh, and Benjamin Myers. So I just want to give them a shout out and thank them. But if there are any other questions, we'll linger around for a little bit longer. But other than that, I encourage everyone to take a look at the master plan and submit your comments or visit us during the office hours.
So Lizette, we do have a question here about, is the bike path on target to start being built next year? I can't recall if it was 22 or 23. I'm trying to find the transportation improvement program, but if anyone there knows the exact date.
Paul, this is Chris. It's on the tip for 2022, and
Okay.
then to be built in 2023.
Okay.
And,
Thank you.
right now, the work that has to be done is to work through establishing the right of way,
Right.
and that work is taking place, as you know.
Right. Yes.
Great,
Thank
thank
you.
you.
Lizette, this is Chris. One last comment or one last question, and that is, I'd like to submit some written comments. You have a form, is that correct, online?
We do have a form online. If you find that that isn't enough for you, you can also email us directly. All our emails are listed on that, so feel free to send it to me or Sarah or Philip, whoever you're comfortable with, and you can send those comments directly to us or use the public comment form.
Excellent, great, and that's fine. Thank you so much.
Thank you. So with that, I see no more questions or comments or anything in the chat that I could find. So Sarah has put in the link to the master plan. So please take a look at it there. And thank you so much for joining us. We'll be around next week if you have any other questions. Have a good night, everyone.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks,
you.
everyone.
Good
Have
night,
a great
everyone.
weekend.
Good night, everyone.
Hi, Peter.
Good night,
Thank
Peter.
Molly. Hey, hey, Christine.